Welcome to the Legit Football NFL podcast. Brian McFadden here, co-founder of Legit Football. This time, I'm the one filling in for Kevin Phillip Fox, who's doing a fantastic job taking over as the main host for the Legit Football NFL pod. And I feel blessed because I get to pod again with the man from down under, Adrian Revito.
Money Mac, it is so good to have you back, man.
So
I know it's temporary.
We should say why. So our illustrious co-host Kevin is in France, of all places. Going to be there for 3 weeks, Adrian. Not going to lie, I'm a little jealous.
Extremely jealous. As someone who's about to have a very big drain on my ability to travel and my disposable income heading my way, extremely jealous.
About a 8-pound, 5-ounce drain.
Give or take, yeah.
Give or take in that vicinity. His girlfriend is French, interestingly enough. I did not know that. So they're actually going to visit her family, which is one of the reasons for the extended stay.
Nice. Well, that's news to me, and I'm sure they'll have an awesome time. Aman, Thomas already in the chat. What's going on, guys?
What's up, guys? Nice to see you. We are going to have some fun today. We got a really, really cool main topic. But before we get to that, as always, it's time to jump into the legit headlines, Adrian. It's always fun when you're trying to find headlines in the middle of June. This is about as dead gets in the NFL offseason. However, there's still some stuff to talk about. Let's start in Washington. How about a little Sam Howell love? Commanders quarterback Sam Howell, quote, passed the initial offseason test. Adrian, there's praise, like everybody is the best they've ever been in the greatest shape during offseason OTAs, but I feel like the Sam Howell hype has been a little bit higher than normal. According to The Athletic's Ben Standig, Howell aced the Commanders' offseason practices, OTAs, and minicamps, and will enter training camp well ahead of Jacoby Brissett. That is one of the noticeable things there, Adrian, because Brissett was the best starting quarterback on the Cleveland Browns last year. If Sam Howell was that much far ahead of him, I'd feel pretty good if I'm a Commanders fan.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Brissett was probably right up there with in terms of having a backup, he would be probably top tier in the backup. I'd put him above Jimmy myself. Don't let Kevin hear that. So that is notable.
He's in France. We can talk all the stuff that would trigger Kevin normally.
Yeah, I like to think, Kevin, you better be watching. That's all I'm saying. But no, this is really interesting to me. And really the Commanders, and we'll talk about this in our main topic, they've got a pretty good supporting cast around him. So if Sam Howell can actually deliver some goods, they could be competitive this year. I also, though, you're right, it's hope season. Everyone thinks their team is the best at this point. Everyone thinks that all the problems of last year are gone. And I also think the coaching staff are kind of playing for their jobs at the moment. So they've got to be spruiking this guy who's going to be their quarterback one for the year.
Yeah, they have not just like a pretty good surrounding cast. They've got actually one of the best rosters in the NFC. The biggest question mark is at quarterback. They have Eric Bieniemy now. They're calling plays. Yes, Ron Rivera is on a hot seat with new ownership coming in, but this team could make some noise. This is one of those teams that if the quarterback can play the guitar, they're going to make some noise in an NFC that doesn't have a whole lot of top-heavy talent.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think, look, you're right that in their team is quite complete. It's just it's hard for me to say it when the quarterback is not a proven commodity. Then it's hard for me to say that they're going to be able to compete. But if Sam Howell if he can deliver, they absolutely can compete, especially in the NFC. I'm pretty sure if my memory serves correct, their strength of schedule is fairly easy. And that's mostly because they play each other.
They finished fourth also. They finished last place, so they get a last place schedule, which definitely boasts their success. Here's the interesting thing about Sam Howell, Adrian. I don't know if you know this, but a couple years ago when he was in college at UNC, there was talk about him being a number 1 overall quarterback prospect. Now,
really?
He was like, how they have the way too early preseason, whatever. He was up there by the Todd McShays and the Mel Kipers, and he just had a really, really rough season after that dropped him all the way down, to the 5th round for Carolina. But the arm talent is there. This is a guy who at least has the physical capabilities. If he puts it together, if whatever blip he had at UNC that caused his stock to drop is overcome, we could be talking about them as not just a playoff team, but somebody who'll make some noise.
You know what? I'm happy for the Commanders because I feel like their fans have gone through a lot. They've got a terrible owner who is hopefully out the door. I feel like they deserve something.
How poetic would it be, Adrian, if in the first year of new ownership out of the Dan Snyder, they go and like make some noise in the playoffs like that, the football gods are real if that happens this season.
As someone who does not like Dan Snyder, that would be amazing. I don't know if you're the same as me, but like I'm not a fan of Dan Snyder, so I really do hope that is the case.
I don't think anybody outside of like his immediate family are fans of Dan Snyder, and maybe even that is.
If that's being generous, yeah.
Oscar, what's up in the chat? So we got a full chat. Armand, Thomas, Oscar, all the greats ready to have some fun here on the Legit Football Pod. Let's go ahead and move on to Denver. Let's talk some Broncos. So the offense under Sean Payton is due to prioritize yards after the catch. This comes from Nick Kosmider of The Athletic, wrote that Russell Wilson, quote, will more frequently be granted opportunities to spray the ball around the field and give his receivers room to run. From 2017 to 2021, the Saints under Payton ranked 6th in yards after catch per reception. Now, Russ Wilson has always kind of been known as a deep ball guru. That went away last year. He completed just 36.3% of his 80 pass attempts that went 20-plus yards in the air. So maybe this will be good for Russ. This will be good for the offense where he can have some pre-designed quick throws, get it to our playmakers, and get some yards after catch.
Yeah, I'm conscious on the Sean Payton note because he also had Alvin Kamara there, who's just a yards after catch machine. But look, Russell Wilson, it looks like he's turning it around. All the reports coming out of training camp, all the videos you see where he's jacked up, he seems like he's going to have a turnaround year. So I'm on board with this. I feel like as someone who was a fan of Nathaniel Hackett, I feel like he was the problem there. And I feel like Sean Payton's probably going to turn it around. And it makes sense that they prioritize yards after the catch, get the ball out of his hands quick. They've got a nice little receiver core there. It seems like it's a good plan. And I mean, do you trust anyone more than Sean Payton? I really can't think of a coach that I would want to hand my keys over to more than Sean Payton.
It's not just the play calling. I think Russell Wilson is going to benefit from the alphaness of Sean Payton. Right? This guy needs some discipline. He came in there, he got his own office, he brought his own training staff and whatever else craziness he did last year in his first year in Denver. He's like a kid who needs to be sent to the army camp or whatever.
Point,
yeah. And he needs a strong whip. And I think this is the kind of coach who's won a Super Bowl in the past who can come in there and get it done. Once again, it's hope season for everybody, right? But Denver, after as high as they were last offseason and as low as they ended up falling, I feel like throwing the Broncos fans a little bit of a...
because Denver they were a quarterback away from the Super Bowl until they got Russ. And then they got Russ and they were like...
They went the opposite direction.
Yeah. The quarterback was the case for not reaching the playoffs. That was a really rough year. And you know what? Look, I like Russell Wilson. He's a weirdo, and we love a good weirdo. And I like greatness. He's a good player. He doesn't deserve a reputation that he's going to get if this is tarnished. So I'm quietly rooting for him.
All right, let's finish up in Chicago for our last legit headline. DJ Moore, who was acquired in the trade to get Carolina from number 9 to number 1 from the Bears, is set for heavy targets in 2023. Multiple reporters have been impressed by the chemistry between Justin Fields and Moore. Kevin Fishbane of The Athletic, quote, the best play of Wednesday's practice was a deep ball from Fields to DJ Moore. Fields dropped it in the bucket with impressive precision. That's noteworthy because he had a lot of passing and accuracy issues last year. Great as a runner, not so much as a passer. Moore hauled it in for the explosive gain. Their rapport has been the best part of the offseason this spring. Another one, Courtney Cronin from ESPN. The timing and trust Fields and Moore have displayed early on is something Chicago will lean on to help the offense take the next step in the quarterback's third season. Even without being in full pads, the spark Moore provides is apparent to Bears players on both sides of the ball. You buying this DJ Moore love fest, or do you think this is just more off-season hype?
Seeking permission to be a homer.
Oh, yeah, you don't need to seek permission, man. You.
I am in this case because I am not buying into Justin Fields. I mean, not every ex has been around that long, but he seems like the hype around him every year is exactly the same. Now, I appreciate he hasn't had a wide receiver one like Moore, but what are we doing here? What are we doing here? He's not. I'm sorry, but he needs to actually prove it outside of practice and outside of the offseason because when he gets on the field, he can run and that's all he can do. So
He was a good passer in college, though. That's the thing. He was not known for his scrambling and running ability in college. He was athletic, but he was drafted as high as he was because he was a prolific passer. Suddenly things flipped. Turns out he's an amazing runner and has had issues passing. So it's there. We've seen it at Ohio State. The question is, can it all come together?
It's funny, though. I actually didn't know that, because when he came into the league, it was all about his run, all about his ability to scramble and his athleticness. And like, to me, and I've always said this, when I associate rookie QBs and what I associate with them is their ability, they get nervous and then they scramble out of the pocket. And if they can survive, that kind of defines a rookie year. So I know he's not a rookie anymore, but it seems like he's still having that same, I need to get out of the pocket and I need to run this ball. Now, if they work on that and if they coach him to start throwing the ball more now that he's got a good receiver, that's great for the Bears. But I'm sorry, I'm not buying it until they prove it. And that's the homer in me. I know.
No, you could be right. We have to see it, right? It's all just hype right now. Another thing, we actually put out on Twitter today about that the Bears have allowed more sacks than any other team in the NFL since 2020. Now, yes, part of that is the quarterback getting sacked, but that's, 3 full seasons of statistics shows you that the offensive line has been a big part of that. And maybe Fields came in, he was used to playing behind a very stout offensive line in Ohio State with tons of apparently first-round wide receivers, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, Chris Olave. And he gets to Chicago, and they don't have any of those weapons. He doesn't have anybody to rely on, and he doesn't have good protection. So, yeah, I think you're right, Adrian. He might get a little skittish. Can he overcome that, though? Can he bounce back behind a much better Bears offensive line and renewed weapons led by DJ Moore?
Well, I believe, though, and I think sacks are a quarterback stat a lot of the time. Absolutely, the offensive line plays a part. Don't get me wrong, but like a great quarterback put into a bad offensive line will get the ball out quick, or they avoid the pressure, whatever it be. Like I to an extent, I feel like that's going to be on Justin Fields. So they can build the line around him, but unfortunately, if he is that guy, if he's going to hold on too long, if he's always going to try scramble, that's not going to change. I
am ready to move on. I assume you are too, because I'm sure you don't want to talk about the Bears for too long as a resident Packers fan.
Well, we're about to anyway, but
I'm gonna tee it up because I've been off the podcast. I didn't even get a chance to tee it up.
Wow.
He just went right in the middle of my segue. All right, there you go. We are on to our main topic. It's a really fun one today. This was Adrian's idea, so I'll give him the credit for this. It's mid-June. OTA's minicamp's done. Training camp starts at the end of July. So we've got a 5 or 6 week period, but we have a fair amount of data, Adrian. We have data from practices. We have data from who they drafted, free agency, who's getting cut, all of that. It's time to take a step back and talk about where we stand on all 32 NFL teams. Now, doing all 32 in a single show might run 3 hours, and as I'm sure our goats in the chat would stick around, we want to break it up and to give you guys extra content over multiple days. So we're going to break it up by conference, and we're going to call it Legit NFC and Legit AFC, where we stand on every single team. We will have divvied up the teams. We'll have a timer of 2 minutes. Anthony, if you want to get a timer ready to keep us on track. Whoever is assigned the team can give their thoughts, and then when they're done, other people can pipe in as long as we stay within that 2 minutes. Adrian, does that sound like a plan?
Absolutely sounds like a plan. And as the man who came up with the plan, I'm of course going to endorse it. So let's do it.
Also, as the man who came up with the plan, I am going to let you kick it off. So once again, we are going to start in the NFC today. We're going to do all 16 teams, timer of 2 minutes to talk about where we stand on all of these teams. And then we'll do the AFC later in the week. Adrian, I'll let you pick one of your teams. We don't have to tee it off in a particular one. We don't have to go division by division. You can just name a team that you want to talk about and where you stand in the NFC.
Alrighty. Anth, you good for the timer? I'll just make sure that's okay. Let's get it. So I'm going to start in the East with the Cowboys. So
are we going to see the timer? Hold on. Do we get to see the timer? Oh, he's just going to whistle when it's done.
He's going to tell us when we're
Sorry to interrupt.
So we don't know until... No, that's reset, right. That's okay.
Reset the timer. That's on me, Anthony.
I need that 10 seconds back. So let's go. So, all right, let's talk about the Cowboys. Let's start with the defense because that's undoubtedly their strength. And I think we can all agree since Micah Parsons came in, defense has been where they build around. So they got Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence. They probably lead the best pass rushing duo in the NFL. And then scarily enough to that, they've actually got decent backups. So they've got Sam Williams, who got a 70.4 PFF grade, Dorrance Armstrong, 61.8. That's a really strong rushing rushing room, I will say. And that's kind of what they lead their defense through. They got Muzzy Smith as their first rounder. He'll help stop the run along their line. But he does need to step up right away. Again, unbelievably looking at some of their duos. So they've got in cornerback, they've got Stephon Gilmore and Travion Diggs, our ball hawk extraordinaire. Their defense is just loaded. And I'm just throwing names out here because their defense is what they're going to run through. And honestly, they've got a rookie from last year, Deron Bland, who was really starting caliber quarterback. And he's going to be back up to these guys because they're so elite. They did some good moves picking up Brandon Cooks on the offense. I think I actually had a hot take in one of the earlier shows that he's going to outproduce CeeDee Lamb, and I stick by it.
Oh,
he was hitting 1K.
That is hot.
Was hitting 1K yards, with bad quarterbacks. Now he's got Dak Prescott. Pollard's become the starter. He needs to maintain durability because we know he's had those issues. Weirdly, when I was looking up their starters on the line, they got Tyron Smith, Tyler Smith, and then another Tyler. I can't remember on, but Terrence Steele in there. They're all versatile guys that can all be moved around. And then Dak, for me, I think he's underrated as a quarterback, not particularly his skill, but what he does before the snap and picking apart there. I'm already at 2 minutes. Hot damn.
Oh, wow. There we go.
Okay, well, I have to say one thing, and then you can kill me for it. Their biggest mistake and what they will regret is getting rid of Kellen Moore. And I talked about
that's exactly what I was going to mention. The one big question mark here, and we don't have to go into it because we went over 2 minutes, is coaching. Mike McCarthy now calling the plays. Kellen Moore in LA. The defense is going to be fine. You still have Dan Quinn there, Micah Parsons. You mentioned the defensive backs. DeMarcus Lawrence is still there.
Killers.
They're stacked. The talent is there. The talent you can't question in Dallas. But how bad will the coaching be, especially on the offensive side of the ball? All right, let's stay in the NFC East. Let's go right to the top. Let's start with the Philadelphia Eagles. So offense, they didn't really lose anybody. They lose Isaac Seumalo was the guard. He's now in Pittsburgh, but they had Cam Jurgens that they drafted the year before, ready to step in. So you've got one of the best offensive lines, probably not going to miss a beat. You still have A.J. Brown. You still have Devontae Smith. DeAndre Swift, I think, is an upgrade. He's a more dynamic playmaker than Miles Sanders. And Jalen Hurts, what a leap he took last year. There are questions about, with Shane Steichen gone, their play caller. Is there going to be, we don't know what we're getting in their new play caller there. Before Steichen started calling the plays 2 seasons ago, they really struggled to have an offensive identity. Defensive side of the ball, yes, they lost both of their starting linebackers, but Nakobe Dean stepping up. They lost Javon Hargrave, but then landing that stud rookie at pick 9, and defensive back, safeties, question marks, but I trust that defense to stay at the top. So too early to make picks here, Adrian, but I still think that the Philadelphia Eagles are the team to beat in the East and one of the best teams overall in the NFC.
I think it's their division to lose, and I agree with you. It's a question mark on the coaching, but I do trust Nick Sirianni. And I don't know if you've been listening to the podcast, but I have like a weekly love for Howie Roseman as well. I just feel like they've got the ownership to make this deliver. So it's their division to lose.
Yeah, I mean, as Roseman, if you can win a Super Bowl, dismantle your roster, start over, and get to the Super Bowl again, you're doing something right as general manager. My biggest question mark is you got to have players to step out. They lost Marcus Epps and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Both are starting safeties. Like I said, Kaiser White, TJ Edwards out the door. You have some rookies stepping in. They're going to have to play meaningful snaps in their second year in order to keep that defense upright. And like I said, the play calling on the offense. But these are a little nitpicky at this point. Mm-hmm. How am I not over 2 minutes, but Adrian is? I feel like, okay.
See,
I'm trying to fill the time and talk, and then Adrian gets cut off in the middle of his Cowboys.
Money Mac, that's why you're the pro. You just handled that. That went right up to the 2 minute mark. I was already over. Hadn't even got all my points out. Right.
Well, I lucked out because you went first. So
yeah, I've learned from my mistakes, and I'm back again. Are we good to move on?
Yeah, let's keep going.
All right, on to the Commanders. So we'll finish out the East here. So we just talked about the Commanders, so I won't drain on too much about how they are just such a complete team. So Sam Howell is delivering the way he's sort of expected to be via training camp. That's fantastic. If not, they've got Jacoby Brissett, who was a very, very capable quarterback last year. And what is so great about him is the room around him. So their wide receiver room is it's like picture perfect. So they've got a clear number one in Scary Terry McLaurin. Curtis Samuel, really sneaky good last year in the slot. And then Jahan Dotson, their second year, coming in at number 3. Like that's what a wide receiver room should look like. On paper. We'd all love number ones, multiple number ones. I don't love their tight end. I don't love Logan Thomas. He only scored a 52 PFF grade last year. But then their running back room is nice. I know they want to get Antonio Gibson into the passing game as well. And they got Brian Robinson, who's just, I love the story of him returning from being shot to starting in the NFL. Their defense is kind of a boom or bust at this point because they've got a couple of people that are coming up for contract years. We all know Chase Young and Montez Sweat. I think Montez Sweat is the better of the duo, and I don't think many people would disagree. And Daron Payne just got his bag, so that's great. I actually love their first round selection. So Emmanuel Forbes,
yes,
love
huge Emmanuel Forbes fan.
Yeah, he's a little bit smaller, but and he's got some big receivers in the East to go against. But I'm a really big fan, and I think he's going to be impact from the word go. So for me, the coach Ron Rivera's got a very hot seat. He needs to deliver, and I think with this cast, if their quarterback can be competent, they got this.
I think I'm picking the Commanders as a playoff team at this stage. Yeah. We talked about them in one of the earlier headlines. If Sam Howell is just middle of the road with all the talent they're still filled with first rounders across that defensive line. You mentioned Emmanuel Forbes, also a huge fan. So I think they've done the right mix. They've got the great play caller and Bieniemy. If Howell takes a step, watch out for Washington in the NFC. All right, let's close it out with going to the New York Football Giants. Great season a year ago, and I like the talent, but I do think they overachieved. They won 7 one-score games. Look, the NFC's weak, so they'll probably still be a playoff team, any Giants fans out there, but to win the amount of games they won by 7 scores, it was a little bit overshadowed by the fact that the Vikings won 11 one-score games. We'll talk about them in a little bit. But Daniel Jones, Brian Dable maximized him, right? He played within the structure of Dable's offense. He went from being one of the most turnover-prone quarterbacks in the NFL to actually being one of the least turnover-worthy plays. That's coaching right there. He just signed a big contract. Does that affect his play? No Saquon at this moment. He refuses to play on the tag and has said verbally that he would consider sitting out the entire season. Without Saquon, the prospects for New York goes way down.
It all falls apart.
On the defensive side of the ball, really, really great season last year. They added Deontay Banks out of Maryland, another guy who I really liked. Forbes was probably one of my favorite defensive backs outside of like the top 2, Gonzalez and Witherspoon. But Deontay Banks might be number 4. Really like his style of play on a defense that was already pretty good. So I like the Giants. I don't think they'll be as good as they were last year, but in a weak conference, they'll probably still squeeze a wildcard spot.
Yeah, I think they're due for regression, and I've picked them to go quite down. I mean, I do like their defense, I really do, and I love Kayvon Thibodeau. But I think they paid the wrong guy. I said this when it happened, and I'm saying it now. You should have paid Saquon. I don't think Daniel Jones is worth that money. I don't know if you agree with me on that, Brian.
Positional value. That's what it comes down to. It's not about one player's talent versus another. It's about the impact the quarterback position has versus the running back position. I went on a little bit of a rant on 30 Minutes. We actually talked about the running back market and this whole stand that Josh Jacobs, now J.K. Dobbins, Saquon, they're all making. And I think it's a little bit of a losing effort, and nothing against the talent of those guys.
So take that aside, though, and I'm sorry, I know we're over. Can you win a Super Bowl with Daniel Jones?
Well, I don't think you can win a Super Bowl with the best running back in the NFL.
I agree, but if you're gonna extend Jones and keep him in the building and pay him all this money, that's got to be aiming at something. That's got to be aiming at a Super Bowl. Otherwise, you're better off rolling the dice.
But I'm not sure, because who else? What are your other options there? They finished at a much. They finished in the playoffs. They were in nowhere close to having a chance at any of the top quarterbacks in this draft. Next year, they'd have to really be awful, because Drake May and Caleb Williams are probably going 1-2, at worst 1-3. So you'd have to be one of the worst teams in the NFL to get to that position. So what choice do you have? Sign somebody off the street, a free agent? I don't think Daniel Jones is worse
Derek Carr?
than
Jimmy G. I don't like Jimmy G.
I don't think. Yeah, Jimmy G. I'm glad you threw Jimmy G out of there. Yeah. Carr. How much of it? I don't think Carr is night and day. I think Carr is also a reflection of his surroundings. We saw that last year in Vegas. So
I think he's got a higher ceiling.
Carr is better. Yeah, but not a Super Bowl ceiling. He's not the difference. Just like I don't think going from Andy Dalton to Derek Carr is the difference. So if you're already not at that Super Bowl ceiling, you got to pay the guy who's in the building who just had a really, really solid season within the structure of your offense. If he can do that again, no, I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender, but not everybody can be.
I could look silly at the end of the year, but I think Daniel Jones getting paid was a mistake. I don't think he's a franchise.
I think they paid him too much, but I think they had to pay him at the end of the day, because you've got a head coaching staff in their first year who overachieved. There's now a lot of expectations suddenly on this Giants team. You can't decide not to pay the quarterback because that would plummet. This team is still a little devoid of talent when you compare them to teams like the Niners, when you compare them to teams like the Eagles, when you compare them to the Cowboys. So if you're losing a quarterback, even a quarterback as mid as Daniel Jones, after winning 10 games in the playoffs, beating the Vikings, you're going to suddenly plummet, and that's going to be really bad for the fan base. They had to pay Daniel Jones, whether you like him as a player or not.
Yeah, you make a good point, but I stand by there's been fire takes. That's what we've missed.
I think Anthony's like, all right, move on, guys. That's enough.
Yeah.
Enough Daniel Jones.
Whistle.
We'll save it for the 30 minutes. Then we can just rant about whatever.
All right. Let's move into the North.
What division do you want to move on to next?
Let's move into my beloved Packers. So, all right. Thank you, Anthony. All right, so let me implore to you, my co-host and our beloved fans, Jordan Love is not the train wreck that he looks like he's going to be. He has been working this offseason. He's been taking practices.
Yep. When the co-host and the producer are rival NFC North fans.
I should have taken the Lions. So he's been doing private practices with Aaron Jones, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and that's going to keep going. He's going to host another one. Jaden Reed has come in, and he's a really good slot receiver. I think he's going to be challenging Doubs for that number 2 spot. Who has been really wowing out of all of the training camps, OTAs, is Luke Musgrave. He and if you just watch some of the videos that are on Twitter, he looks like an absolute beast in the tight end. I trust LaFleur. I really do trust him as a coach. And there's been, if I take you back to 2021, there was those games that Devontae Adams had turf toe, and they still didn't lose. Their offense has the right pieces, and there's no reason why Jordan Love should be slept on more than any other unproven talent so far. The Desmond Ritters, Sam Howell, all them. There's a chance they can be great. On the defensive side of the ball, Rashawn Gary, if he's back to full strength, he's got to be one of the most underrated pass rushers in the league. They've got Lucas Van Ness now. They can rotate him in. That's going to be great. Devondre Campbell needs a little bit of a step back to his previous season. And I can go into detail. And he did, Armand, you did Adrian again. I don't know if that's the way. Maybe that's our thing now. So Jair Alexander jumped on the back of Jordan Love and said best quarterback in the league. And Jair Alexander,
come on, you can admit
it or not, that's a lie. But he's an elite talent. He's got to know something, right?
Okay, but the best quarterback in the league. Come on.
Absolutely no way. Let's be honest.
No, thank you. I was gonna say I know you're a homer, but
no.
Here you mentioned it specifically with regards to these other quarterbacks. There's so much uncertainty. We don't know what we're getting out of Sam Howell. We don't know what we're getting out of Desmond Ritter. We don't know what we're getting out of Jordan Love.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest question mark. Is there's just so much makes it fun and exciting. There's a lot of great pieces in Green Bay. If Love is decent, even a middle of the road quarterback, they'll be competing in that division. But we just don't know. We don't have much data.
That's what he is. He needs to be average. Anything less, and obviously then he is what it is. All right.
Let's go ahead and take a break and bring in our producer and let him run 2 minutes on his Detroit Lions. You know we weren't going to go into the Lions and not let Anthony be the one to talk about it. So I trust you to set your own 2-minute timer, Anthony. Try to keep things not too astronomical. I know you're excited. It's rare to be this excited.
It really is. All right, I'll start it up. So, it's hard to not come off as a homer, but when you've been through what I've been through as a Lions fan, and this team looks like they could start winning, things get a little overwhelming in a positive way, and you start to really think about it. So, Jared Goff is on his game, and at least in OTAs he was. Jahmyr Gibbs was taking a lot of receptions and doing a lot of pass catching. So, I think that the scheme that they're coming up with Dan Campbell has. He's officially settled this culture. Like it's made. It's set in stone now, and now they're ready to go out and win, and they have the talent now too.
Ready to go out there and bet.
They're they're all
not completely settled. That's something to keep in mind. I'm just saying.
But it's looking up. And so I'm not saying we're going to go to playoffs, so we're going to win the Super Bowl. I'm just saying we're on our way there. And I think that now what they have to do is prove themselves. They have to, what Dan says, bite kneecaps. So I think with the Gibbs addition, and then you have Anzalone being re-signed. Anzalone was he was overlooked last season. If you look at his stats, he's just like at least top 15 in his position, at least in the NFC North. And I think that with the receivers, especially bringing Marvin Jones back, I know Jameson Williams is out for 6 games, but I don't think that's going to put that big of a dent on the offense. And then defensively, with all the additions in the secondary, free agency and the draft, and just the pass rush with Hutchinson, and then the offensive line, just every part of a football team that I'm naming looks good on that roster. And I think personally, they're going to win at least 10 games. And I know we're not making predictions, but those are my thoughts.
So I'm going to answer before the Packers fan answers. I was on the 49ers Rush podcast earlier today. I hadn't been on there in a while. And I predicted, we did an NFC power rankings. I had the Lions at 4 in the NFC. But that being said, talk about uncertainty. A lot of the moves that they made on defense look good on paper. Aaron Glenn didn't run a great defense at the beginning of last season. It's one of the reasons they missed the playoffs, because they started 1-6. There is still a chance that all those nice moves on paper don't work on defense. I actually have zero worries about the offense. The offense is going to be fine. They only added playmakers, and they were a top 5 offense last year, but there's a chance that defense is still going to be pretty porous. That being said, they're in a weak division. Sorry, Adrian, but you lost a Hall of Fame quarterback. The Bears, like we said, they could be good, but there's still a lot of uncertainty there, and the Vikings, we'll talk about them shortly. So I do think they'll make the playoffs, but if there's one Achilles heel, is how is that Aaron Glenn defense going to work, especially with all these new pieces?
I love it, Brian.
Now, Adrian,
I think for what it's worth, I think you're making the playoffs. I say it all the time. I've got hard knocks rose tinted glasses. I still love the Lions despite being in my division, and I really do hope that they deserve to do well. But I obviously don't hope they make it over the Packers. Whatever, though, you get me. And I think Jameson Williams, when he comes back after his 6-game violation, suspension, I think he's going to make an impact as well. I'm excited for you, Ed. I feel for you.
We're all excited for you. The Lions have suffered long enough.
Very long time for people to agree with me when I say the Lions could win. It's been
31 years since they've won a playoff game, Adrian. 31 years.
Oh, wow.
That's rough. That is rough. I mean,
I've watched that game over and over again, by the way. I have rewatched that game.
It's like Christmas. He wakes up and is like, do you want your presents, Anthony? No, I just want to watch the Lions playoff victory from 31 years ago. All right. Thanks, Anthony. I always appreciate your thoughts. Let's go ahead and move on to the Vikings, Adrian.
Vikings.
He gave himself outro music too. That's what happens when you're a producer.
Yeah, that's favoritism right there. Last week or week before, he didn't even give me intro music. That's time to move on. Okay. All right, the Vikings. They are a very, very difficult team to figure out. It's kind of weird, they send Dalvin Cook out the door. They've sent Adam Thielen out the door. They're taking calls on Daniel Hunter. It seems like they're tearing it down, but then at the same time, they're bringing pieces in, and they've still got Justin Jefferson there. He is, we can all agree Justin Jefferson is probably consensus number 1 wide receiver in the league.
Oh, yeah.
And he's got, and he's got, I don't think anyone would disagree with that. And he's got a chance to go for 2,000 yards this year, be the first receiver to ever do it. They sent Darius Smith off, or he kind of sent himself off. They didn't send him off. But then they brought in Brian Flores. I think that's a great move. I think he's going to improve their coaching. They are super vulnerable at cornerback. So they moved on from Patrick Peterson, Cameron Densler, Chandon Sullivan, and Duke Shelley, all gone. So their defense is going to be a lot of work, and I don't know how much Brian Flores can do. But I also just think, take aside, let's pretend that we replayed last year. You do not have that same record. You do not get that many one score wins. Again, that just doesn't happen. So I think 11. We're due for some serious regression. Yeah.
That was unprecedented. That's not hyperbole. An NFL team has never won 11 one-score games before in a single season.
Absolutely. So I think they're due to regress. We could probably all agree on that.
I mean, their defense was already one of the worst in the NFL. And yes, I'm a huge Flores fan, but the talent is as bad as it was on defense. The talent is actually more devoid. You talked about the losses they have. They're actually, now it looks like they might be shopping Hunter. Like they're one last good, solid player on defense. And I think they have a plan in place. They want to score points because they want to be entertaining and possibly compete, but I think they know that they're going to regress. They're making roster decisions like the Dalvin Cook decision, Zadarius Smith. They're making these decisions as though they're starting to kind of tear the pieces down. Kirk Cousins not in contract discussions to extend next year. I think they know, like, they don't want to completely let go. They want to try to compete if they can, but I think they have a feeling that they're going in the opposite direction.
Yeah, no, I think unless Kirk Cousins balls out, he's gone next year.
Let's finish it the North with the Chicago Bears. We talked about them a little bit earlier. Yet another one of these NFC teams with so much uncertainty. Justin Fields going into his third year. Much improved offensive line. Tevin Jenkins, who we thought was a bust for a while. They've finally found some life for him at guard. You've got DJ Moore now there. They've got multiple receivers. Darnell Mooney can be much better suited as a number 2 receiver. Cole Kmet on the up and up. And Robert Tonyan. Some good words from camp. Tonyan, former Packer. So the offense looks good. Defense, they really shored up that linebacker core. They've got some young pieces on there. They still have a long way to go. So this is a team that we could, like right now, I think I had them like 13th in the power rankings. But it wouldn't surprise me if they end up like on the fringe of the playoffs. There's just a lot we don't know. There's a lot of possibilities for a team like this to take a leap. Matt Eberflus needs to kind of prove that he can get that defense to gel, because I think the offense will be exciting to watch. If Justin Fields, Adrian, even takes a little bit of a leap as a passer and looks more like the guy he did at Ohio State, this Bears team could be competing in the North and could be working on a playoff spot come January.
Yeah, on paper, they look great. Like, there's no denying that. I think, look, maybe I'm a bit of a hater, but I just don't believe in Justin Fields, right? So that's, I own my own flaws. But I do admit that their roster looks really good, and they could absolutely take that step. It seems like, they've historically had a pretty rough go at it in management, and it seems like they've moved on to the right people now, and they're getting the right people in the building. It's just, I guess the hard part is this: if Justin Fields takes a step, and correct me if I'm wrong, year 4 or year 3? Year 3.
Going into year 3.
Right. So you're gonna have to decide if you pick up his 5th year option at the end of this year. So if he takes a step, but it's not enough, you're kind of like, you're in that weird situation. It's like, do I pick up the 5th? Do I not? I'm assuming they will, because he's definitely probably shown enough already. But I just don't know I still don't know if they're going to be competitive. I think, yeah, it's a weak division, but I think the Lions and Vikings have enough to be able to sort of take on the Bears. And I didn't say Packers. I believe they've got that, but I don't want to be too much of a homer. I think they've got enough to take them on. We mentioned it before, one of these teams, so many NFC teams with just question marks, where I think we're going to have a completely different understanding of them 6 months, in the middle of the season from now than we do at this point. All right, what do you say we go on to the NFC West? I'm going to go ahead and start with the 49ers, who I talked about. I was on a podcast earlier today, so the Niners are fresh in my head. Like so many of these teams, they were on the doorstep of the Super Bowl, playing the NFC. Quarterback's a question mark, but not because I don't believe in Brock Purdy. I actually am a big Brock Purdy fan. I think he is built to run that Kyle Shanahan offense, quick processing, quick decisions, accurate, get the ball out into your playmakers and let them go yards after catch, crazy. But coming off a major surgery, I do think he'll recover at some point, but how long does that take? What happens if Trey Lance comes in and plays well enough that when Purdy comes back, they've said the right things? It could create a quarterback controversy. But look, this is a defense that was arguably the best defense in the NFL. They had one weakness for the most part, and that was up the middle. And what did they do? They went and added Javon Hargrave in free agency. Now you got to block him and Nick Bosa on top of Charvarius Ward. Had a maybe top 5 or 6 cornerback performance last year in his first year with the Niners. You've got Tua Funga, who made a lot of plays and really shored up the secondary and the safety side. You still have Fred Warner, maybe the best off-ball linebacker in the entire league. You did lose DeMeco Ryans as head coach, to Houston, was coaching the defense. You brought on Steve Wilkes, pretty good defensive play caller in his own right from Carolina. Offensive line, a few losses. McGlinchey is now in Denver. You still have Trent Williams, though, one of the best tackles in the entire league. CMC still there. Ayuk, Debo, Kittle, you name it. Really comes down to the quarterback. If Purdy looks good again, it's basically, in my opinion, the Niners and the Eagles in the NFC. Yeah, and most people have that same opinion, which kind of speaks to how strong Shanahan's offense is, because you've got questions at quarterback and people still see them as a powerhouse. If Sam Darnold can go there and get hyped that he's going to do well, that Shanahan's doing something right. The rest of their roster is loaded. You mentioned all the names, so I'm not going to go through them, but it's just insane, the rest of their roster. So they really are a quarterback away. I think if Purdy, I don't know if you agree with this, but if Purdy was healthy in that playoff game, they were winning it.
No, I picked the Eagles to win. I still think Philadelphia would have won that game, but it obviously would have been closer and less disastrous for the Niners.
Absolutely. But yeah, look, 49ers fans, you've put up with Jimmy G for a while, which is just injury riddled. And now you got Brock Purdy. I hope he doesn't follow that same path, because they really could be a powerhouse if they can stay healthy at quarterback.
That was a little bit of a freak injury. That wasn't like it just bent wrong. You know what I mean? So that's just bad luck. All right, let's pick one of your West teams. We'll keep it going.
Right. Let's keep going. So let's move to the Cardinals. The Cardinals. All right. The Cardinals are the 2023 dumpster fire of the NFL. They really are a rough team when you go down their line. So I'll start at the most important position. You've got Colt McCoy as your starter. They've got a 5th-round rookie, Clayton Tune. I know in our Legit Football headlines we talked about him having a potential Brock Purdy opportunity. Now
he could be. I mean, everybody's looking for the next Purdy. Could it be Tune? Sure, I guess.
That's the thing. I think he's going to be the new. Oh, it could be Brock Purdy. It could be Brock. It's kind of like how every promising rookie. Oh, he looks like the next Mahomes. It doesn't necessarily mean it's just it's things you say in the offseason, right? So they could have gone out and they could have got a number of quarterbacks. They could have gone. They can still get Carson Wentz, Teddy Bridgewater. They can still get Nick Foles. They could have gone for Brissett, Andy Dalton, Mike White, anyone that would have kept the seat warm for Kyler Murray to come back and have a respectable season. But I think we can probably agree that the Cardinals are trying to tear it down. So they are looking to lose this season. I don't think we see Kyler come back. I don't think he takes another snap for the Cardinals. I think he's out for the season and then he's gone next year. This feels like the Dolphins of 2019. Sorry to bring up bad memories, Brian. But
that's fine. I've forgotten about anything prior to this offseason as a Dolphins fan.
To my next point is the Dolphins of 2019 worked out fantastic for them. So they've got a good chance of getting 2 high picks next year. Next year looks great for you, but this year does not. Hopkins out the door. You got Marquise Brown there as your wide receiver 1. Now, he's played that role before at Baltimore. He's just cracked 1,000 yards, and that was with Lamar Jackson throwing you the ball, not Colt McCoy. So questionable. Their defense is just paper thin. The only elite talent they've got is Budda Baker. He wants out the door. I don't think they'll send him out the door. But I really hope Jonathan Gannon had this discussion to say this year's a mulligan. Like whatever happens this year at Arizona, and I'm sorry if there's any Arizona fans listening, you got a rough 17 games ahead of you.
Based on how they set up the 2024 draft, I think everybody in that building, maybe not the players, but I think the organization understands that this is a throwaway year. They are really set up nicely. They could have 2 top 5 picks because they had Houston's pick from trading back up. So that's the thing to look forward to, Cardinals fans. Caleb Williams is going to be your starter in 2024. All right, let's move on to the Seattle Seahawks. I've said this many times, but I got to keep saying it. I picked Seattle 32nd in my offseason power rankings last year. You talk about owning your flaws. It's not like a lot of other people were picking them much higher than that, but nobody could have seen what happened. They had more than contributions, starting ability from so many rookies. Geno Smith playing better than anybody thought he was capable of, and it got him into the playoffs. They had to squeak in, but it got him into the playoffs. I don't think that's a fluke. When you had contributions from so many rookies, you nailed it, GM John Schneider. So I think you're going to see more of that. You've got the Rams and Cardinals who are going to be most likely cakewalks. You've got a rest of the NFC, which is already pretty weak. So I think Seattle is cruising to another playoff appearance. I do not think it was a fluke from Geno. Maybe not as high as we saw some of his highs, but I do think he'll be a steady quarterback. He was the best deep ball passer in the NFL last year, Adrian. Did you realize that? It was crazy.
Yeah. Ridiculous.
This is not a guy who was dinking and dunking. You add on the fact that they added Jackson Smith and Jigba, and on the defensive side, a secondary that had Tariq Woolen as a nice surprise last year. Oh, they went ahead and got Witherspoon in the first round. So they got the top cornerback and the top wide receiver in the first round. Zach Charbonnet, I actually like the ad, maybe for fantasy purposes. If you're a Ken Walker fan, not not so much, but I was a big Charbonnet fan. Very, very good pass catching back. That was one of the things Walker struggled with. So I like what Seattle's done. You had 2 rookie tackles last year that overperformed. Now they get to go into year 2. A lot to like. I think you got another playoff season coming, Seattle.
Yeah, I think Seattle's setting the bar for drafts. I think we can agree with that, right? They've killed it last year and the year before. So I'm on board with everything you said here. And I am on board with the Geno Smith train. But like you, I thought that was going to be an absolute train wreck last year. So, props to you for owning your mistakes. That's really great. Zach Charbonnet, you mentioned him. I'm also a really big fan. Kevin and I have talked about him. Yeah, it's all the way up for Seattle. I actually think, depending on the quarterback situation in the Niners camp, they could be the favorite to win this division.
Well, why don't you finish off the division? Let's talk about the LA Rams, Adrian.
Alrighty, the LA Rams, the guys who had the historically bad follow-up to a Super Bowl win. So I know, Brian, it's been mentioned to me that you think people are sleeping on the Rams and they shouldn't be sleeping on the Rams.
Not exactly. I mean, a little bit of clarity. I just think, they had 5 wins, right? And there's more uncertainty on this team than anyone else because they had close to 40 rookies. If they nail some of those, they still have Cooper Kupp, they still have Aaron Donald, and if Stafford's healthy, and Akers was a top 5 running back over the end of the season last year. I'm not saying they're a playoff contender. I just think maybe they could end up with more than 5 wins this season.
Yeah, I'm with you on this. When I say sleeping, I think that they're being slept on as they're just going to be another train wreck of a year. But they've got Aaron Donald, as you mentioned, who's not only the best defensive player, he might be the best player at his position of all time. Cooper Kupp, amazing. Stafford, if he stays healthy. You mentioned Cam Akers. They've got Van Jefferson there, who's a good wide receiver too. He was a great wide receiver too in 2021. And their best weapon is Sean McVay. I know people have forgotten now, but Sean McVay is the guy that came in and reset what the league expected a coach to be.
Soon to be dad, Sean McVay. They announced on Instagram on Father's Day that they're expecting their first child. Congrats.
He and I are in lockstep in that one. So
yeah.
Their defense is where they're going to struggle, despite having Aaron Donald on there. They've got some really big question marks. They've got probably 3 to 4, set starters. You've got Jordan Fuller, he's an okay option. Kobe Durant had a 73 PFF score. He's an okay starting corner. And then, like I mentioned, the greatest player of all time. So their defense is going to struggle. I think that's where they're going to lose their games. But as you mentioned, and I don't know if anyone knows it, or many people know this, they have 39 rookies in their camp. So 14 drafted.
Yeah, I said almost 40. I know it was 39.
That is just the NFL version of throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. But I do think that if this works, let's say out of those 25 undrafted, they get 3 to 4 good players, this will become the new standard. It's going to be the new Sean McVay-led, it's a copycat league and people will take this. In terms of strength of schedule, they're about the middle point. So to me, they could go either way. They could repeat their 2022 season with 4 or 5 wins, or they could come in with an 8-9, 9-8 kind of record. I do believe coaching is I believe in coaching so much, and I do believe in Sean McVay. I think the hunger to be great is going to be there again. I'm struggling with this time, Brian. I don't know about you, man.
I've been pretty good. I have some
great.
sort of a mental clock to get it in there. But that's all right. It's all good content. I'm going to ask you to start off the last division, the most wide open division, because I have a team I want to finish with. So why don't you pick one of your NFC South teams? You can guess. I mean, it's no surprise that this team.
All right, I'm going to talk about the Atlanta Falcons. No, I'm joking.
You do not do such a thing.
All right. Okay. I'll leave Tampa Bay to last, so I'll take the Panthers. So let's talk about Bryce. Let me look at the time. Okay, let's talk about Bryce Young. So he's fallen into a pretty good spot, right? So he can succeed where he is. I think he's got Frank Reich. Frank Reich can build a quarterback. And even he's got Andy Dalton as his backup. That's someone to me that I would want as a mentor. You get certain quarterbacks where I feel like they don't want to be mentoring, whereas I think Andy Dalton would be okay with it. Panthers receivers, kind of like the Giants, they've got no real legitimate number one, but just a significant set of 2s and 3s. They've got DJ Chark, Jonathan Mingo. They've got Adam Thielen post-prime, which is a bit rough. Terrace Marshall. So they've got an okay room, but they really, to me, don't have someone that stands out as a number one. They need that. But no one's expecting Bryce Young to take them to the Super Bowl this year. So they've got a year to build. Miles Sanders is their RB1. We've kind of talked about it on this show. I'm not a big believer in Miles Sanders. I think we talked about how he was running back by committee in the Eagles, and I think he was behind just a historically strong O-line. That is not the case in Carolina. A couple of their guards are coming off serious injuries. I think he's going to struggle there, and I don't think he's going to see the production that he saw. Second division strength, they got JC Horn there. He is an absolute stud. Love JC Horn. Dante Jackson pairs with him. That's quite good. And I really do I trust the coaching. I think that Frank Reich knows how to make the most of a quarterback. He had Peyton Manning, he had Rivers, he had prime Carson Wentz. He can develop quarterbacks and he can make the most of them. So I think Bryce Young's in a good spot.
I think that is what success is for the Panthers. There's no huge expectations other than the guy they traded a lot for to get to number one to take Bryce Young has to be good. He has to show promise. He has to show that he's not too small for the NFL. I think if you do that, if he has flashes, if he has moments, and people stop questioning his size, that's a win for Carolina. Thomas, if he's still in the chat, is a Panthers fan. Our resident graphics designer, one of our interns for Legit Football. I think most Panthers fans would agree that that's what they want. Does Bryce Young look like the future? If he is, things are looking up for Carolina. All right, let's go to the New Orleans Saints. You mentioned Derek Carr earlier. Thomas, still in the chat. Awesome. So this is the Saints offense that was really good under Andy Dalton last year. And yes, Derek Carr had an offseason, but if you look at the stats that compare Andy Dalton versus Derek Carr back to 2017, he's basically superior in every single metric, every single passing stat you can think of. I'm not saying this isn't a Derek Carr love fest. This is a Derek Carr more than Andy Dalton love fest. So there's a clear upgrade at a position for an offense that was already pretty good. They nailed multiple rookies, not just Chris Olave, the first rounder, but Raheed Shaheed, amazing, one of the best deep ball players in the NFL. And guess what? He got a better deep ball throwing quarterback. Questions around Alvin Kamara because of the upcoming suspension, but they drafted Kendre Miller. I like that move. And they brought in Jamal Williams. Not exactly the speed of Jamal Charles, to be a little bit more steady in the running back room. They have a pretty solid offensive line. Defense was really good. They did lose a lot of players, Caden Ellis and David Onyemata, who went to Atlanta. They also lost Shai Tuttle, Marcus Davenport. Dennis Allen has been a very good defensive-minded coach. They're playing in a wide-open division, so the Saints are probably the prohibitive favorite to win the NFC South. You probably know I won't predict them to win, and it's early because I have another team that I have my eyes set on. But overall, pretty good offseason, especially on the offensive side of the ball for New Orleans.
Yeah, and that they do have. So I talk about strength of schedule a lot because I think it gets missed. They have the number one easiest strength of schedule. Obviously, they play within the South, which helps them. But they got the number one easiest strength of schedule. So they're predicting, I think the over-under was 9.5 wins off the top of my head.
It only took 8 to win the division last year.
Yeah, but I still put them as a solid under. I don't think they're going to be good this year. I actually like Derek Carr. I think his ceiling is quite high. And I think there's times where, and in recent years, like going back 2-3 years, where he was really balling out. So if he can get that back, he could be great. But yeah, I don't know. I think, look, I'm with you on this. I think we're in lockstep on who we think is winning this division, but I'm not going to take your thunder.
Well, why don't you talk about the team that won the division last year, the Tampa Bay Bucks?
All right, my boys. So anyone who listens to this show regularly knows I love me some Baker Mayfield. So Baker Mayfield now, he's got Dave Canales as his coordinator. Dave Canales is the guy that brought Geno Smith back from the dead last year. Now, if you were to take me back to the start of the 2022 season, so who do you want, Baker or Geno? I would be leaning to Baker every time. So to me, he's got Dave Canales there. I really hope he does the same thing and brings that Baker Mayfield back that we love, that cocky, confident, let me break the biggest playoff drought in all of sports, Baker Mayfield, all right? So I know he hasn't even been called out as the starter just yet, but to me, it's his spot to lose. I know Rashad White's there. He didn't really do a whole lot last year, but he's kind of poised to be this year's breakout, I think. Leonard Fournette's out the door. And Rashad White caught 50 out of 58 targets last year. So I think he'll be targeted really heavily in the short game because I think Mayfield or Trask, if it's him, they're going to need a safety valve. They're going to need someone close by. Yeah, we all know Mayfield's vision is probably one of his bigger issues. But he has been getting some really good reports out of camp. Bruce Arians was a big Baker Mayfield fan. He wanted to bring him in earlier. So I know he's not the coach there, but he's kind of like the pseudo coach. He's pulling strings behind the doors. They've still got all the weapons that they won a Super Bowl with. They've got Chris Godwin. They've got Mike Evans. They're still a great receiver duo. They've got Russell Gage behind him, which is a very capable wide receiver 3. Probably one of their more talented players. Tristan Wirf's still on the team. He's a good option right now to go to the left tackle spot. They've still got a decent defense. So their rookie, Kalijah Cansey, he's a formidable player. I think he'll do really well. He's with Vita Vea there. Jamal Dean, Carlton Davis, decent pair of secondary, not the best. Dean's probably the better of those two. And then, look, the best weapon, if we can be honest with the Bucs, is a weak division. Sorry, Falcons. That's the chance. That's how they snuck into the playoffs last year. They didn't deserve it. I know that was with Brady, but that's their best chance this year as well.
That's the important part. 8 wins last year, 8-9, won the division with the greatest of all time playing quarterback, even though they kept most of their roster. And even if you like Baker Mayfield, that's a drop-off. 8 wins, and they went from Brady to Mayfield, which means less than 8 wins at the end of the day. I am not high in the Bucs. A lot of their star defensive players are starting to age. Devontae David still playing at a high level, but that age is getting up there. Shaq Barrett as well. So I don't think this will be as good a year for the Bucs. Certainly don't think they're going to win the division because I'm not going to make an official prediction. I do that later in the offseason, guys. It's still a little early. It's still June, but I am a Falcons fan for this. This is my team. This is what the Lions were for me last year. Yes, a lot of it is on paper. The offense was really good, especially at running the ball. They were the best running team in the entire NFL last year. Their run blocking offensive line was the best at the NFL, specifically at run blocking. Brought back Caleb McGarry, signed Chris Lyncham to an extension. Tyler Algier, my sleeper last year, broke the Falcons' rookie rushing record. And what did they do? They just added the greatest running back to come in the league since at least Saquon, if not earlier. Getting comparisons to LaDainian Tomlinson, to Edgerrin James. That's Bijan Robinson. They're playing him at wide receiver. In training camp, they view him as a weapon, not just a running back. Kyle Pitts, supposed to be ready for July training camp. Drake London, great rookie season, added a ton of pieces on defense. Let's go through the list. David Onyemata, Caden Ellis, Calais Campbell, still playing at a pretty good level. Bud Dupree, he's a nice rotational pass rush. Jesse Bates now at safety, and Jeff Okudah, who I know was a bust so far, but he is a first rounder. Granted, it's all on paper. Ryan Nielsen, the new DC, who was the co-DC in New Orleans. So I love the way it looks. I love the moves they've done. Yes, like so many teams, Adrian, it all comes down to the quarterback. Desmond Ridder, 2-2 as a starter. What do we get out of him? Maybe he doesn't have to do too much with all these weapons.
I was just about to say, like so many NFC teams, they've got the question mark, and that question mark is Desmond Ridder. He's got Heineke backing him up. I think they're going to have to get rid of that. They've given him the number 1 job, and they have to keep him there to see what they've got, but I'm not a believer. I think they should have gone out and made some moves. I think they should have got someone in, even if it wasn't your forever option, because they've got such a great supporting cast. You mentioned around him. He's got so much going on. And Bijan Robinson, I know we talked about this in the draft. I know how much you love him, and we all do. I think he's going to carry that offense. He's going to run through him. I really hope Desmond Ridder doesn't mess it up, because to me, I'm like you, really excited to watch the Falcons play. Time.
Nice. Perfect timing, perfect ending.
This was the last one.
This was fun. We went through the entire NFC, said where we stand. We're calling this legit NFC. We are going to do legit AFC later in the week. We'll let you guys know, pay attention for when we're going to launch that. We're still going to discuss. I had fun, Adrian. How about you?
As always, man, it's so good to have you back, Money Mac, and I know you'll be back at the end of this week, and we'll be going through the AFC. So really fun exercise. And if I'm being honest, really fun to just look into. When I was sort of researching, I was just, there's no off season where you cover football, but there is an off season, and it's now. So it's nice to get excited. It's nice to look at these things and be ready for, I guess, at least preseason to start. So yeah, it was real fun.
It's a nice time to check in. A lot of things are going to change in training camp. People are going to get injured. People are going to rise. People are going to fall. But this is a good time to just step back and take a look. So excited to do the NFC. We'll do the AFC later this week. Thank you to our producer, Anthony Weiner, as always, but also for jumping in and talking about his Lions. Thank you to everybody in the chat, Thomas, Oscar, Armand, whoever else. Thank you for listening and watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're here for the first time. This has been the Legit Football NFL Podcast. We'll see you later in the week.